Have you ever tried to get beautiful blurry backgrounds for your photos or videos, but you can't really figure out exactly what you're doing wrong or why you can't seem to manage it consistently? Well, if that's the case, then you are in the right place, because today I'm going to show you exactly how to get beautiful blurry backgrounds in your photos and videos every single time. I'm Colette, the founder of Story Envelope Media, and you are watching The Micro Filmmaker, where I teach you how to make your photos and videos a lot better. And in this episode, I'm going to teach you how to achieve shallow depth of field, which means that you're going to have beautiful, creamy, smooth, blurry backgrounds. In order to achieve shallow depth of field, you need to know about four main things. Those are your aperture settings, the focal length, the proximity to the subject, and the sensor size. We're going to go through those one by one, and then at the end of the video I'm going to give you a special tip that will also help you to achieve those beautiful blurry backgrounds in a very simple and easy way. Alright, let's start with aperture. The main thing to know is that aperture is in your lens, and it is how wide the iris in the lens opens and closes. If you want to achieve shallow depth of field, then you need to set your lens to one of the lowest f-stop numbers. You want to have that aperture wide open. Having the aperture wide open, allowing lots of light in, will throw the background out of focus. The next thing we need to talk about is your focal length. So focal length refers to the length of the lens. It does not refer to the actual physical length of the lens itself. Now, I'm not going to get into what all of that means because, frankly, I don't really care. But I will say that in order to know your focal length, you can easily just look on the lens itself. It will always say the focal length. It's measured in millimeters. So this right here is a 50 millimeter lens. And as you can see, it clearly says 50 millimeters right there on the lens. There is a whole range of focal lengths that you could be using. The point is that if you want to get consistent shallow depth of field, you want to use a longer lens, a lens that has a focal length probably in excess of 50 millimeters will help you to get shallow depth of field. When you're using a longer focal length, what the lens does is actually compress the background, and this gives you a shallow depth of field. It also actually makes the background look like it's closer to the subject than it is, but that's not really a big deal. The next element which affects your depth of field is the proximity of the lens to the subject. The closer you get to the subject or the area of critical focus, the shallower your depth of field will be. So if you're shooting a subject and you want to throw that background out of focus, the closer you get, the more you can throw that background out of focus and have a beautiful blurry background. So again, proximity. The closer you are to the subject, the shallower the depth of field. The last element that affects the depth of field is actually, in my opinion, the least important, and that is the sensor size. The larger the sensor you have, the shallower your depth of field will be, using the exact same settings as if you were using a crop sensor camera. So if I'm shooting something with a full frame camera and something with a crop sensor camera, and I set my camera to f4.0 and I am 3 feet away from the subject, then on that full frame camera, the background is going to be more out of focus, and I'm going to have a shallower depth of field compared to the exact same image shot with a crop sensor camera. That being said, you can still get amazing shallow depth of field with a crop sensor camera, so quite frankly, I don't really care about this all that much. Now, before I give you my last pro tip about how to get beautiful blurry backgrounds, make sure you subscribe to this video and give it a thumbs up if you liked it. And let's keep going. So, the last pro tip is kind of an obvious one, but a ton of people do not use this. In fact, one of the most beginner mistakes is to do this wrong all the time, and that is to constantly put a wall right behind your subject. A wall or a tree or a bush or shrub or whatever. You're just sticking that background right up against your subject, and of course you're not going to have a blurry background because the wall is too close to the point of focus, which is the subject's eyes. So if you want to get beautiful blurry backgrounds, then make sure you move your subject away from the walls or whatever background it is that you're using. Just simply moving your subject away from a wall will give you beautiful blurry backgrounds. Pulling your subject away from a wall will also give you more context and create a more beautiful photo just in general. To review, there are 4 elements that you need to think of if you want to achieve shallow depth of field consistently, and that is aperture, setting your f-stop number to a nice low number. Your focal length, using a long focal length so you can throw that background out of focus. Number 3 is proximity to subject. Get nice and close if you want to have beautiful shallow depth of field. And 4, consider your sensor size. With a larger sensor size, you will get a shallower depth of field. And finally, my last pro tip is pull your subject away from any walls. And that's it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe and go over to my website, storyenvelope.com, where I teach microfilmmaking. You can take my free mini course, 7 Superpowers, where I teach you 7 superpowers to make your videos more beautiful and technically proficient. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.